Most history books call him a hero. Others believe he was both. Before the crown, before the speeches, before the exile, there was a boy named Tafari Makanan. While European powers carved the continent, Ethiopia remained free. As a young man, Tafari was not the strongest, but he was observant, strategic, and patient. By 1930, Tafari Makanan became Emperor Haile Selassie I. It was proof that African leadership could still stand tall in a world that treated Africa as weak. Europe was growing restless. In 1935, Italy invaded Ethiopia. Gas against courage, Haile Selassie made a decision that would define his legacy forever. Not to surrender, but to speak. It is us today. It will be you tomorrow. The warning was ignored. Some call him a failure, but one thing is certain. Haile Selassie was the most powerful African voice the world chose to ignore. Born in 1892 in Ethiopia, a land that stood different from the rest of Africa, and that freedom would define Tafari's destiny. He was not the loudest comma in a palace filled with rivals. Patience was survival to Africans. This was more than a coronation, but his reign began under a shadow, and one man, Benito Mussolini, wanted Ethiopia crushed. To prove African resistance was an illusion, modern weapons against farmers, and the world watched in silence. He left Ethiopia in 1936. He stood before the League of Nations and issued a warning. The room was quiet, and Africa paid the price. 5 years later, the world changed. World War II weakened Europe, Italy collapsed, and Haile Selassie returned to Ethiopia in 1941. To many Africans, this was a resurrection. The king had returned, the empire was restored, hope was alive again. Selassie promised modernization, schools, roads, institutions, a future beyond tradition. But rebuilding a nation is harder than reclaiming a throne. Progress was slow. Power remained concentrated, and while the world praised him, many Ethiopians felt left behind. Internationally, his influence grew. He became a symbol of African dignity, a voice against colonialism. In 1963, he helped form the Organization of African Unity. His speeches inspired revolutionaries, thinkers, and freedom fighters. Beyond Africa, something unexpected happened. In Jamaica, the Rastafarian movement saw him as divine. To them, Haile Selassie was not just a ruler, he was prophecy fulfilled. But symbols are dangerous. When leaders become icons, criticism disappears. And when criticism disappears, problems grow silently. Back home, famine spread, poverty deepened, corruption hardened. The emperor who inspired the world was becoming distant from his people. And slowly, the question began to rise. Was Haile Selassie still leading Ethiopia, or was Ethiopia simply carrying his legacy? By the early 1970s, patience had expired. Students protested, soldiers mutinied, the people demanded answers. In 1974, the unthinkable happened. Haile Selassie was overthrown by a military group known as the Derg. The Emperor of Africa was placed under house arrest. No speeches, no crown, no audience. In 1975, Haile Selassie died. Official reports called it natural causes, but rumors of assassination never faded. His body was hidden. His end was quiet, almost forgotten. And that is where history becomes uncomfortable. How does a man who inspired millions die abandoned by his own nation? Some say he failed to adapt. Some say he stayed too long. Others argue the world asked too much from one man. But maybe Haile Selassie's story is not about perfection. Maybe it is about contradiction. A hero who stood against empire. A ruler who lost touch with his people. A king who warned the world and was ignored. So the question remains, was Haile Selassie a hero, a failure, or a lesson Africa still hasn't finished learning? If you want more African history they never taught in school, subscribe and stay curious.